Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the live stream today. Happy Friday. And Derek from Myth Vision, thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely, man. Tim, we've been going for years now, and we've known each other, and appreciate you having me on this morning.
Oh, the honor is all mine. And I was looking at the times that we've connected, like on YouTube. It's actually been a while. Derek, of course, runs the Myth Vision channel. I've put the link underneath the description of this video, as well as in the comments here. If you're following with us in the comments, please do subscribe and like his stuff. He's just doing amazing work. But we first touched base back in 2020. I interviewed you. I was at the lowest level of my expertise, and it was about a year after I'd escaped Christianity. And then you joined me again mid-2021 to co-host, and we were interviewing a friend of mine who had escaped Christianity but was also escaping a drug addiction. So we haven't spoken on YouTube in 4 years. We've touched base behind the scenes a lot, but we haven't actually been together in 4 years, I don't think.
That's a long time.
A lot happens in 4 years, both publicly and privately, but it's so good to see you again.
You as well, man. Yeah, you've grown, and the thing is, you have a solid foundation of people who are clearly in. That's an important part. Some of these YouTubers who grow real big oftentimes don't have a connection to their audience, and I think that this is more important than just blowing up. You're doing it right, man. You're doing it right, and you're helping so many people. So that's another important part.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And for anyone that is new to my channel, that's coming over just because we posted in some of the Myth Vision groups, I'd love it if you would subscribe to my channel as well. For anyone that doesn't know me, I think probably anybody that's here that knows me already knows Derek. So just to summarize, Derek is doing a great job both talking about the mythology behind Christianity and Judaism, as well as deconversion stories. I'm focused a little bit more sort of directly on the deconversion stories, as well as talking about religious trauma, healing from that, and reclaiming our identities. But for anyone that doesn't know me, I've been doing this for a while. I deconverted back in 2019, September of 2019, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that story in a few minutes. But basically, a few months after I started, I got so inspired by Derek and a couple other channels like yours, and I just thought, this is too important to not get involved. You know, there's people, once you deconvert, you realize that you feel this overwhelming gladness that you escaped, but also the sense of, this wasn't fair that they didn't tell me where the mythology came from. Like, if I had known this, it probably would have changed things so much earlier. I just didn't know. Even going to Bible college and memorizing thousands of verses, I didn't know. And once you know, you're like, it's other people. It's not fair to not tell them what I know. And it's just been an amazing journey. I was honestly thinking at first of kind of trying to go down a similar path to you, but you did such a good job. It was like, you're a hard act to follow. But I thought, you know what? The one thing that I feel is just motivates me the most, and it's a little bit different from yours, and I think we complement our channels. Our channels complement well, is the religious trauma recovery and healing from that, and reclaiming your identity. And it just kind of became my bread and butter for now. Where there's some different projects I've got going on behind the scenes that'll kind of sort of broaden my perspective over time, but at the moment, that's my big goal. But I've seen you've done some videos in the last few months where you've been interviewing people as well in a similar way. How's that been going?
It's great. Sometimes I switch it up because, like you, sometimes we need a little kindle to our fire. And like, what makes me thrive is seeing people find freedom and joy and actually peace, loving themselves. Like, you're not taught to love yourself. You're not. You're supposed to love your neighbors, like you're supposed to, but like, how can you when you're filthy, you're unrighteous, you deserve damnation, right? So this is that Christian, clearly later idea that Jews did not hold to within the Hebrew Bible. But I think once in a while, I take a break on the documentaries. I take a break on the rigorous, meticulous academic stuff. And I just want to go, what's up, bro? How you doing, girl? Let's talk about this. You know what I mean? And like, it's therapeutic to go through and hear someone's journey as they unwind what was going on in their mind. And you're not alone. You're like, ho. So we're not the only ones thinking this way. I'm not crazy. It's okay. All of that. And I think those are sometimes even more powerful to helping the viewer than just, well, notice how the birth narratives are mythology and they contradict each other and this didn't happen. Like, that's cool. That works for some people. Other people just need to hear the average person go, I just started to doubt because this pastor or whatever, you know, whatever the experience was, and people were late. So I like to switch it up, as you know, and do that every once in a while.
Yeah, it's awesome. When you do that and you're hearing other people's stories, does it ever kind of catch you off guard to realize that there's maybe parts of your own journey and your own heart and mind that you kind of thought you were done with, but maybe somebody says something that reminds you of a memory you've had and you're like, oh wow, that actually kind of stings. Like, yeah, I'm still dealing with that, or just something in your own personal life.
You know, I don't think that it's been like a sting, but there have been, if you will, revelations of like, oh yeah, that happened to me too. And yeah, I went through that as well. Like I was able to remember things that I don't usually remember about my own journey. That yeah, I went through the same thing, and I try to hear what that meant to them. And then sometimes I might reflect and go, yeah, yeah, yeah. But I feel like I feel like most of the anger, if you will, that comes from being kind of deceived and whatnot, most of that I think has dissipated for me, where I'm actually getting to a point of healing in this process where it's like, I actually love these stories. I actually love the mythology. But understanding them for what they are. And if they're not myth and they're somehow a mixture of legend and history, whatever, doesn't matter. None of it proves it. It doesn't help their case. The point I'm getting at is like, I had never read Gilgamesh my entire life, like the Epic of Gilgamesh. And when I read it, I had an experience reading it. Like it was just profound human experience. And I was like, this is way older than the Bible. And it was very deep. And I fell in love with the book. And I was like, holy moly, I can have fun with this stuff now and no longer need the dogma, and the trauma is not there clearly. The problem is you still have this combat that takes place with people that are in the apologetic arena. So that's the struggle, is when does humanity get to a place where we can do what the Greeks did with their own myths and process them in a way where they no longer believe them, but they can use them as archetypal, traditional examples about society or how to live, like what not to do, what to do. They didn't believe them anymore at a certain point, but they still enjoyed the classical world and the art that came from it. I don't know. That's kind of where I'm in my mind wondering where we can go, right? Some people want to throw the whole book out, but you know, you have to imagine how many of the other books did people also believe and literally take those things literal. I think the more we educate, the more we can get past it's not the book, it's the interpretation of people today that are harming people using it. And education, I think, is important.
Yeah, couldn't said it better. Yeah, I'm curious though, when you look at the apologetics people that you talked about, and by the way, it looks like there's a little delay on my side. I'm sorry about that. I'm going to see if I can work on that. But when you look at the apologetics people, do you like debates? And do you ever get to a point where you kind of say to yourself, you know what, this is kind of ridiculous? I mean, like, for example, like one of the things that happens to me a lot is I look back at what I used to believe, and you can like tear it apart in a million little ways. And you can say, I can analyze the history, and I can read Dr. McDonald, and I can, read all these scholars, and I can Dr. Ehrman. But at the end of the day, it just looks stupider and stupider as I get further away from it. Like one of the silliest ones is just the idea that Yahweh wants you to cut off the end of your little boy's penis. I'm like, that was my God. And then, we can go on from there, genocide and slavery and child brides. But like, that was my God. Really? Like, I didn't see that. And I've told people before too, this is an example that I've used, but the church here in Atlanta that I went to before I was deconverted, it's a big Presbyterian church called Perimeter Church. And the pastor, I remember one night he was preaching, and at that point I was neck deep in Calvinism. And he was talking about this lady that had lost her baby after birth, but had lost her baby like in the first year. And he was telling the congregation, probably with her permission, what he had to tell her to counsel her. And he said, ma'am, you're never going to heal from this loss unless you get your theology straight. And ma'am, the theology you need to get through your head is your baby deserved to die. And I remember at the time kind of cringing, like probably everyone else in the congregation, but also thinking theologically, yeah, the fact that we're even breathing for another second is a grace and a mercy of God.
Yeah.
But then when you escape, you're like, that is some it's just weird, garbagey shit.
Right.
And yet you were like, I love this God. He's not an abuser. He's love and he's justice, you know?
Right. Well, your question again, there's two things there, right? Do you enjoy debating, which I don't debate, but you could call it debate when I critique these guys. I have no interest in going on and getting like in an actual formal debate. It's not my particular style to go in there and be a rhetorician. That all you need to do is sound like you're more confident and be more assertive, and you win. That's what debates head to head in public eyes typically look like. Can I hold my confidence? Can I make better gotchas? And that's it. Whereas if you have time to process and send videos, then you know that style of reacting or responding, I can do that quite well. I just never did the whole public debate thing. You asked me if I like it. No, I don't. But I also know it's almost like, imagine someone has a very difficult job. It's a necessary job, you feel, but they don't like having to do it, but they know that their like not having to do it is not as important as the job they know they're trying to accomplish to help people. So you kind of bite the bullet. And it's a tug of war, because part of me wants to move on and just educate and have fun and talk about people's deconversions and ignore the apologists who have so much momentum, especially right now, with the way the United States is going, you know, wanting to combat that and be like, sorry, you guys are, there's so many problems with what you're doing to try and bolster this claim, your faith and whatnot. So it's difficult, because yes, I want to do it because I want to help people. No, I don't want to do it because these people are toxic. And it's like talking to someone, they don't move. They're not going to budge. There's not an actual inquiry of trying to understand what really may be the case. It's more about, I already believe this is true, and I'm going to work everything out so that it fits what I think is true and makes me seem sophisticated in the process. So that's the difficulty. But yeah, the theology, that example, the deconversion stories, like what you're doing, that's kind of a form of therapy that's going to help someone like the mom who should have went to actual medical therapy and talked to someone about how do I release, or how do I go through life and figure out how to cope and to deal with the death of my child, and not go, sorry, since my God pulls all strings in the universe and every atom moves at his behest, therefore I must explain that God wanted my child dead, and I need to accept that. Like that's pretty insane. And this is one of the things I couldn't quite swallow as a Calvinist myself, when I thought about, you mean I love people that God doesn't love? That means I have more love than God in certain respects. And it didn't make me deconvert, but it made me think, when you get to the 5-point Calvinist view, he only saves who he loves. And you know, Jacob I loved, Esau I hated. He hated Esau. So he chose some and didn't choose others. And I had to swallow this pill that God actually hates people, probably some of my own family, children, or loved ones that I love. And it was like, hold on, but God is love. I came from a Christianity before Calvinism where God was supposed to love everyone, but then you have to wrestle with, well, then why do people go to hell? And like, there's so many like weird theological conclusions that can drawn from all these different systematic theologies, and all of them are bunk. They might reflect elements that you find, but like the Bible's not univocal. You start learning that and you're like, oh shit.
Exactly. It's crazy. It is crazy. I'm just curious, looking back at your own journey, like what would you say that you got out of Christianity more because of the mythology? I know that's what your bread and butter is now, but did that get you out, or was it more the stuff you're talking about? Like, I can't imagine God's going to, let my friends and family burn in hell. Like, what was it that was the biggest straw in your deconversion process?
So
or was it just a mixture of everything?
I'll say it this way. The best way I can put it is, this is why talking to apologists head on, their defense is up. Imagine you're going to war. Just imagine you put all your armor on, you're going to war, and you are supposed to fight the other side. Okay. Any combat, any type of thing that comes at you, you're going to fight back. you don't let your guard down. You're in war. You're prepared for battle at all times. What happened in this analogy for me is I was apologetic. I mean, I was literally studying and learning William Lane Craig, Ravi Zacharias. I had gone through the journey and I'd relapsed from drug addiction, struggling and internally, am I God's child? Yes, I'm God's child. Yes, I believe, I have faith. Like young Don the other day I was interviewing, if you watched any of that,
Yep.
this was me. Like, am I God's child? Why can't I just not do drugs? Why do I keep feeling like I have to escape and the church says it's demons, or you're not theologically correct, or you're not obeying God, you didn't pray the right prayer, you didn't do the right thing, and I thought I was insane because you don't know how to control your behavior when you're an addict. You're trapped in a vicious cycle, and I didn't know I may have a disease. I may legitimately have something wrong with me medically, professionally, and it wasn't spiritual. Okay, it wasn't like demonic or anything. I give you all that to say, the war, I let down my sword and my shield and all that when I'd relapse, and when I'd get clean, I'd have to start over, and I'd ask myself, like, why isn't this working? And I think I just took a breather long enough where I didn't have my guard up, and I was watching Zeitgeist at home, withdrawing off opiates and listening for the first time. I had never heard anyone, no matter how accurate or inaccurate this documentary was, never in my life did I ever have anyone who compared Jesus to other gods in such a manner that made me go, you mean there were other people who did things like this, at least to some degree? Which I didn't know if it was true. It planted a seed. I had my guard down enough to go, what if Jesus isn't the only one who rose from the dead, isn't the only one who walks on water, or isn't the only one who has magical powers, floats up into the clouds? What if he's not the only one that did this in stories? I was never taught anything else. No one ever told me this. No one ever said, hey, by the way, you ever heard of comparative mythology and actually studied? We were always told within the Christian bubble that, like, oh no, the other religions are so different. Like, ours is the one. And you're just almost taught to just don't worry about those. There's false religions. And I did a little tiptoeing into that when I was watching Ravi Zacharias, but always from the point of view of how superior ours was and everyone else's was not. And when I heard Zeitgeist, which is a conspiracy type of, documentary that like is trying to convey Jesus is the son and goes into astrotheology on a whole different level. Now, it isn't just that. It goes into other stuff as well. But I was like, oh my God, maybe there's something to this. And I got around people, started to like reach out and talk to people who also were saying, look at Samson, look at Jesus. He's surrounded by 12. And it kind of matched this new interpretation that takes away that literalist dogma and allows you to think, what if Samson represents the sun? And what if Delilah represents the moon? And what if like the riddle with the 30 pieces of clothing might represent the 30 days of a month? And like, you're willing to have a new, different kind of interpretation that's not as literal. So I believed in God. God was still true. But when I started to do a little bit of comparing this story of Samson to Heracles or Jesus and started looking at other characters within that kind of not as rigorous academic area, but still new interpretation, it made me start realizing like, hold on, this may not be what I was taught in Christianity. And then I started Myth Vision while working a construction job, still was like a pantheist at this time. Like I expanded God and said, actually, I see God like the 6 wise men of Hindustan. I always tell this, but like all religions are a reflection of God emanating in each of them. That's why you find patterns and overlaps, because he's revealing in different cultures in different ways to different people. But he, I probably used the pronoun he, but like God was bigger. But when God got bigger, he had less hold on me, less control, because within the tight bubble of Christianity, there's so much like, this is the only way, you got to have it right, you're going to go to hell. I started realizing like hell, there's other hells. There's Buddhist hells, there's Greek hells, there's Hades. Like, what do you mean? Like, you start to, when you take the others more seriously being consistent, because their stories tell you things as well, and they have claims of ascensions and resurrections and all that. When you take those serious, it deflates the dogma about my one and only. And I spent 15 years or so as a Christian, dogma. So my transition became comparative mythology, but it wasn't that cracked the egg, or it wasn't the Achilles heel. It was me letting my guard down. It could have been contradictions. It could have been morality. It could have been comparative mythology. It could have been anything. If I was willing to put the shield and the sword down and stop fighting for a dogma, being open, I had to internally be willing to sincerely consider this is possibly wrong. And in fact, likely wrong. What are the odds I was born in the right religion at the right time with the right family, with the right, like, once you are willing truly to like, I think that's why deconversion is so freeing, because you're not holding your chest out and you're not like walking around like I've got it. You finally go, whoa, what the hell was I doing? You're like, man, life's so much better. Like, why was I doing that? And so that's kind of what happened. I think comparative mythology was the first step in that direction. And then I started to get into more rigorous academic research pertaining to comparative mythology, honing in that skill. And the more I studied, the more I realized how much that is not inserted in the evidence to help like people realize Christianity isn't this. And if I approach them with comparative mythology or any of that, they have their shield and they have their sword. It's not about the evidence. It's each person being willing. That's all it is.
I love it. But well said. Just if I could summarize to my story, and I know you've heard this before, so I'll keep it short for your sake. But for anyone that doesn't know mine, I was going through that exact same process. My journey began in a kind of a different way than a lot of people's stories. We're just sitting around singing songs with the kids, and we're singing Joshua Fought the Battle of Jericho. And it was the first time I've heard that song 1,000 times in my life. I've got a brother named after that song, literally. And I'm just sitting there, the kids were all spinning, and there's like, 2, 3 years old singing Jesus Loves Me and Jesus Loves Little Children, as you do. And we sang Joshua Fought the Battle of Jericho with a smile on our face. And I thought, I'm going to have to someday explain to them what comes next in that story. Genocide, land theft, slavery, child bride, stoning. I'm like, genital mutilation. Like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like, and as a Calvinist, of course, you're like, of course I'm going to defend that. That's God enacting his justice. Does not the judge of the earth, have the right to do this? Isn't he right? And isn't he fair? And isn't he more than fair? Isn't he merciful and gracious? But something in me, just like a splinter in my mind, said something's wrong here. And little did I know, and within a year of that, it was a 3-year process before I deconverted. And that was in around 2016. About a year after that, I was able to articulate in my mind very much this sentence. And because I said this to people in my life, Christians who were appalled at me saying this, but I said, I'm just exploring some ideas. I don't know where to say this goes, but I have a worldview and a belief system, and I want to go where the truth takes me. Hopefully they're aligned, and they're aligned right now, and hopefully they stay aligned. But if the truth, whatever that means, takes me away from my current worldview, I'm going to go where the truth takes me. Mm-hmm. And of course, Christians are like, what the hell are you talking about? You believe in Jesus. How can I take you away from Jesus and the Bible? I'm like, well, there's things I'm learning. But little did I know that this stuff would evolve. And it is that cognitive dissonance that you're grappling with. And I think Calvinism did such a number on me where I just kept on going back to, but this is not a journey where you get to judge God and hyperanalyze God. He judges and hyperanalyzes you, but you don't get to do that. Your job is to bow your knee. And if everything doesn't make sense, then though he slay me, yet will I trust him. And if he decides that there's all these questions that he doesn't want me to have answers to yet, the answer is, God, I will search them, but I will not wait on my faith to search for the answers. I will believe in you. And if you don't tell me the answer till the day I die and we get to heaven, that's fine. I love you, and I love the gospel. I love the word of God. And that kept on pushing me back. But you're fine. You're fine. Your faith is fine. And it kept on evolving. And what got me out was a couple things like the arguments you're talking about. I was not as much following you at that point yet. I think your channel was smaller at the beginning of my process too, but I was following Matt Dillahunty, Seth Andrews, Dan Barker, of course, just all the greats. I was listening to all these guys, and they were making great arguments. But the thing that got me out was stuff like your channel. And I don't know exactly if I would say I saw it only on your channel.
Yeah.
It was the beginning of that zeitgeisty kind of concept, but saying there's stuff that's being borrowed here. And eventually, literally, it was the end of September 2019. I was just sitting in front of my computer, and the words just popped in my head, and it was like a drum beat, like banging louder and louder, saying, I don't think this is real. And literally the first thing that came to my mind was, there's no way that it's not real, because there's no way that many people have been deceived for what, 2, 3, 4,000 years. There's no way millions of us. And then my immediate thought was, yeah, but we think the Buddhists have been deceived, and the Hindus and the Muslims. Why couldn't we have been deceived? And it was like this voice deep inside me saying, say it, Tim, say the words, say it. It just kept eventually going from a whisper to a scream. Right. It's not real. And as soon as I said it, it's not real. It was all those little things that you're talking about where like, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. It was like, oh, that's why it doesn't make sense, because it was never going to make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's a house of cards. It's based on bad ideas. And as soon as I did, I was like, I know that a lot of people struggle with the grief, and I've grieved a lot over the afterlife, and we can talk about that later if you want. But for me, I almost started laughing. I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Yeah. I've given 40 years of my life to nothing, to the bad ideas of misogynist assholes from 2,000 years ago. That's who I've been basing my life on. Are you kidding me? And I started laughing.
Your point here, for me at the time, none of the moral stuff hit. I kind of was in a hardcore conservative kind of view anyway. And you could say I was kind of misogynistic in a sense, that I aligned myself to biblical, what the Bible says. I tried to make that the biblical worldview. Well, you know why we're in this shitty situation? The woman ate the fruit. You kind of literally start swallowing literally what these texts teach. And so there's a sense in which my moral ethics were kind of, not saying I would have supported slavery. I never really tackled or dealt with that while I was a Christian. Like I tried to, I just dismissed it like a lot of them. No, there's no real slavery. The Bible would never, dismiss, and don't try to look too hard. But your point about the comparative mythology thing, it's not just like, does Jesus look like this, or does the biblical text have looks similar to? There's also, is there real borrowing, or is there real influence? Because even as a Christian, if you told me, well, long before Jesus, demons made fake religions to look like him, I don't think that would have persuaded me as a dogmatic, nutty Jesus freak. Okay. I'd have been like, I think a little practical common sense would have set in. I'd be like, hold on. You mean hundreds of years before Jesus, they had religions where these people, they actually claim in their stories that they did this? Because they didn't tell me this. I didn't know Dionysus was torn apart in Orphic mythology. In fact, if I may, can I just mention what the origin of? Okay, so in Orpheism, or Orphic Dionysian mythology, in the mystery cults, which, by the way, I have a documentary that's going to unravel some of this stuff, because I think there's something going on where Christianity is a pagan Jewish mystery cult that ties into this. But in Orphism, at the beginning, when Uranus and Gaia have their children, which are the Titans, they're a race of gods. Usually, when you look at them, they're like natural phenomena, like Oceanus, the ocean, water, like they're natural elements, but they're deities. Well, they see Zeus, who's another a race of gods, and those Olympians, and they have a child named Dionysus, his name was Zagreus. At the time, it's Dionysus, but it's the firstborn Dionysus that was done by Persephone and Corey. Her name's Corey, Persephone, and Zeus. So this is the heir to the throne, the king of the gods' son, Zeus's son. And the Titans see him crying in his crib and tease him with toys to lure him away, and they end up tearing him into pieces. They kill this baby, they cook him, and they eat him. In the myth. When Zeus finds out that they did this to his son, he zaps the shit out of the Titans to make them ashes that cover the earth. They are completely eradicated, and their ashes cover the planet. Later, mankind gets created from the planet in which the ashes are there, and humans are said to be part Titan, part Dionysus, Zagreus. So when we do good, we are showing the nature of the divine, which comes from Dionysus. When we do bad, we are showing the evil nature, the evil divine, which comes from the Titans. And so in the mystery cult, you could literally slowly eradicate the nature of the Titans through initiation, baptism, participation of eating and consuming, in reenacting what the Titans did to the animals by shredding the animals like the Titans did Dionysus and eating of his flesh, okay, which we get a hint at in the Gospel of John. You even get it in 1 Corinthians 11, but it's more explicit in John where he's like, chew my flesh, drink my blood. But in 1 Corinthians 11, he's like, this is my body, which is going to be broken, which is exactly what happened to Osiris and Dionysus. And this is my blood, right? The cup, this is my blood. And what is he doing? It's a meal. He's saying, this is my body and this is my blood. Eat. They're going to eat. So it is a form of cannibalistic thought, though it's really spelled out in John. All right. Now, all that to say, the origin myth within this Jewish mystery is Adamic, Adam. But even in Enoch, you get these watchers, these divine ones. Notice mankind did not cause the fall. And even to this day, there are Christians who have the fallen angel motif, that fallen angels are kind of the real cause of the origin of evil. So there's like alternative mythologies within Christianity to explain whence evil came, right? Well, in the Enochian tradition, the watchers fall. They start cannibalizing all life on earth and the sacrifices made by humans to them. Eventually, God locks them up, right, into an underground chamber where they're chained in a rocky cavern and all that. Anyway, there's so much overlap, but differences as well. And once you see this, once you start realizing, oh my gosh, why don't I accept the Orphic one, but I'm willing to say a guy and a woman and a snake, a talking snake with a fruit, like, you're right. You look back and go, what? Why did I take this literal? I was told to. I was taught to. And once you realize that, like, that's bullshit, then you can actually start navigating and going, well, okay, then why take any of them? And this is where I get the complaint. You left Christianity. That doesn't mean that there isn't a God. True. This is 100% true. That doesn't mean that another religion may not be true. True. But once you've been deceived on a next level, like your entire identity and everything that you've held sacred is now found to be corrupt, a different methodology replaces it. And the methodology becomes, for us, I can't speak for everyone. Someone does shift religions and goes to different religions and deconverts, becomes a Muslim or Buddhist or whatever. For me, it was, I need the evidence first. Then I'll believe you. Like, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, or no, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Like, you did it again. I'm a dummy for buying into it. So I'm going to have a completely different standard and threshold on what I'm willing to accept as data that's going to prove something's true. So now we go to the opposite spectrum and we go, I'm not sure I can trust any of these claims and these fantastical things that on my day-to-day basis I don't see happen. And that's why we usually transition into an agnostic or atheist position, because where are the gods? And when you start reading the history of the gods, men are writing about them. So your distrust is usually anchored in humans came up with these ideas. Why should I trust humans? And until I have data to overcome that humans are not making shit up, I'm going to start with this isn't true until I have data to prove it is. And that's why we go from one to the other instead of testing all the religions under the world's, umbrella to prove, like, we don't need that now. We have a different kind of methodology. Sorry for rambling.
No, you're great. Your rambles are worth more than most people's thought out thoughts. So
I'm trying.
I love it. And I think too, that just to add to that, there's a sense too, I think, where you just get to the point where you're like, if there is a God, and if he's anywhere near the kind of God I've conceived of, he could do so much better than this. And that was one thought that hit me. Just like, this book is the best he can come up with. I mean, you're talking about, he's writing a book at a time when most people are illiterate, and they're weaving in all kinds of things like gematria and mythology from other sources, and they're probably weaving in some things from the Dead Sea Scrolls community, perhaps, and the Essenes. They're weaving in certainly the Dionysian Greco-Roman mystery cults. All this stuff, you wouldn't know that stuff unless you were really well initiated. So a whole bunch of people are just going to like miss the point of all the critical things going on. And if there is astrotheology, that's going to go way over people's heads. All kinds of stuff, all kinds of Neoplatonism that's going to go over people's heads. So like this little teeny niche group of people that are hardcore disciples that have the money to actually go to these schools, of which there's probably very few who could afford it or read. So this book is going to go out to most people. It's going to go way past them. This is the best he can do. And in that context, he's going to say, by the way, if you don't accept me, there's hell to pay forever.
Yeah.
I just thought this, and to think that there are going to be people on the fence like yourself and me who would say, this doesn't smell right. This doesn't sound right to me.
Tim,
why doesn't God come and show it to us? Like, you're worth so much. I want you in heaven. I'll prove to you I'm real.
You're like, it gets even worse than that, because then the biblical text scares us even more. We're scared shitless, because on that day you will come to me and say, I did this in your name, I did that in your name, and I will say to you, depart from me, you worker of lawlessness, for I never knew you. The believer can't even know. The believer himself who comes to him on that day, who believes he did this in his name and was doing what he believed was true. You can't even know. You come before Jesus on that day and he goes, depart from me. You really never knew me. But I thought I knew you. I believed I knew you. So like, the biblical text screws your head up so bad when you believe this literally, because it can't even guarantee, like, it gives you such a shitty scare of like, you can't really know. And the day you might come before him, he might look at you and go, you thought you knew me? You weren't following the correct version of me. Because notice that's what's happening there. Because he says, you worker of lawlessness. Well, some scholars think this is a jab at Paul. If Pauline Christianity, which I think is the dominant form of Christianity in orthodoxy, you name it, like all of this stuff roots from Paul's theology. Like, how can you know? There's just so many problems with this, Tim, fundamentally, when you take this stuff literally. But again, your point, Richard Carrier said this yesterday on the video that I dropped. He goes, there's so many ways he could prove himself to be the one and true. He could have went around and went to all the kingdoms of all the earth. He could have floated to show them he had powers to fly. He could have had them say, hey, look, I'm immortal. Go ahead, stab me with swords. Every one of you attack me right now and watch what happens. Nothing. And he could stay on earth. He didn't have to fly and go to an invisible place where no one can tell or no one can know. So he could have stayed here and have been fact-checked as the king of the earth so that we knew he's legit. All of this screams, this isn't to be trusted, right? So if you take it literal, all of those make better sense on how he could prove that he's the one and only, instead of the way things went. Where's he at? Well, he's in heaven again now. He's at the right hand. I've heard this before. Romulus is in heaven. Heracles is in heaven at Mount Olympus. Like, Asclepius is on Mount Olympus. Osiris rules the underworld. Like, these people also resurrected, but yes, he went to rule as a king in the underworld. Inanna. Like, I've heard this kind of thing in a way before. It's not identical at all, but why are we not buying those, but we buy this? And I say indoctrination, you know?
It's funny, just as a quick aside, but related. Have you ever played the game Minecraft, or do your kids play Minecraft?
My kids, yeah.
It's funny. I didn't really know about it. Of course, it wasn't around when I was growing up, but I've kind of, they love it. They all love it. I mean, they're like addicted to it. And there's this portal you can go through. Like, you're kind of starting on the ground, and you can kind of in some parts you can kind of fly up a little bit, but you're mostly just on the ground exploring different things and towns and creating stuff. But you can, with certain stones, you can create this thing called a nether portal. And when you go through it, you go to a place called the nether. And I was watching, I was like, what is the nether all about? And it's like lava and fire and like bad guys look like, I'm like, that's basically hell. And it's funny, but my kids were talking about like picking up, like, yeah, this is Minecraft. The Nether is basically like hell. I'm like, that's the same version, or it's more like Sheol maybe, but it's somewhere between Sheol and hell. But I'm like, and they were connecting dots. Like, this is kind of like Christianity. Like, you can kind of go to hell and see how bad it is down there, and you wouldn't want to live there because it's so nasty and there's fire and lava. But the more that I go through this, I do agree that it gets to a point where you just say, I just can't believe it. And I think that's one of the things that Christians ironically struggle with is they want you to believe, but I almost feel like saying like, do you want me to believe something that I truly don't believe? You want me to just say it? And you're getting into Pascal's wager a little bit there, but like, I don't think this is real. I can't force myself to believe it. It sounds too fantastical. And I think the other part of it that gets to me a lot is the idea that when you do escape, though, your life, in my opinion, gets so much better. It's weird at first, of course, when you escape, but when you get like a year or 2, 3 years past it, you're like, wow, like I feel so much happier in life. Like, what I thought that the peace that passes all understanding was only through Jesus and the Word of God, and I've got more peace now than I've had in 40 years as a Christian. How does that work? I did want to ask though, just I want to kind of steer us a little bit to some questions.
Sure.
I'm just talking about kids and Minecraft, but what was it like for you when you deconverted? And by the way, I know there's some comments here. I'm going to come back to them in just a minute.
Yeah.
But
Let's
what
take
was like
to this. Yeah.
Yeah, when you deconverted, what was it like with your conversations with your family, especially your wife and kids? Were they all believers at that time, and were they kind of like, "What are you doing with this, Derek? This is kind of scary. You know, believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. You need to go to heaven." Or were they okay with it? Or like, were there scary moments that your marriage might not make it? Or how did that work?
I think just mostly my kids were on board. My youngest, my mom had kind of taught to be kind of Christian, gone to church a few times, and he was a little bit like worried. And I'm like, you don't have to worry. I had to like talk him down because already at like 3 or 4, he was already getting indoctrinated by my mom, who was taking him to church with her on a Sunday. And this is around the beginning of Myth Vision coming out, right? So he's now 12. But my wife was super relieved. So she always had this God idea, generally, like, she was in the Christian kind of world growing up, but she was never like Christian, if that makes sense. Like, I took this, really drank the Kool-Aid. When I deconverted, I remember I like slowly deconverted. I'm glad I landed the plane. I'm glad also that my friends who were telling me this stuff weren't telling me you need to not believe, or like nobody was forcing me. Well, how do you believe such stupid shit? That's why I didn't get into personally the Matt Dillahunties, the Christopher Hitchens, the Richard Dawkins. I wasn't into them. I needed people who were very nice and gentle because they were very rough around the edges. That didn't work for me. Cognitive dissonance would have caused me to just hold on to my faith even more if you were being that rough. Because in my mind, if you behaved in an antagonistic, angry manner, you were showing you hated God or something. Like, I'd interpret those emotions in a negative light, and I wasn't willing to listen to you. If you had a calm demeanor and you were nice and kind and gentle in your approach, I'd probably listen to you because my guard was down. Sword and shield, when you talk like, God, this stupid Jesus, shield. But I looked at her one day and I said, honey, did you know men wrote the Bible? We're driving to the beach. She looked over me like, I'm going to smack you. Like, because 10 years ago, before I did Myth Vision, before I even went to college for Christian, like I was going to be a pastor, she would argue with me that men wrote it and she just doesn't trust men. And I was like, the Holy Spirit, these men moved by the Holy Spirit, nope, the Holy Spirit. And she didn't know her scripture. And I'd like bash her over the head with scripture and debating my own wife. And I come full circle realizing like, hold on, you were right. And I was wrong. And I'm sorry. And she laughed about it, but our relationship is way better now than ever before. So that's where we're at.
That is so cool. That is so cool. I love it. And just to call out, I know there's a lot of people that have gone through situations where it's the opposite, where their marriages and families have broken up, and mine is certainly included in that. Many of you know the story, but our hearts do go out to. I know a lot of you are hurting, so it is an awesome goal to have families stay together, and we wish you the best if you're going through that. I know it's very difficult, especially if you're dealing with the harder groups like JWs, where they're literally going to say we can't even talk to you again, etc. But Anyway, I do want to get back to some of that in a minute, but I know there's a lot of comments. Just want to get through to a few of them. I'm going to go through quickly because we're probably going to talk for about an hour. We've been talking about 45 minutes. We might go a little bit over if you've got a few extra minutes, Derek, but I don't want to take, I know Derek's got 1,000,001 things to do, and I'm going to respect your time. So again, thanks everybody for joining us today. If you haven't already, please subscribe to Derek's channel. There, it's listed there, as well as beneath this video in the description. And oh God, am I supposed to be here? Yeah, you're supposed to be here. God definitely providentially brought you here. Let's see here. Thank you so much, Misinterpretations. I'm going to skip some of these for the sake of time again. I know some of you also are kind of chatting back and forth, so apologies if I skip any that I'm supposed to put up here. Let's see here. Derek owes me money. All right. Oh my goodness. God made us bad. Yeah, that's a big deal. I appreciate you bringing that up. God made us as the problem, and then it's like the embarker says, you're going to trust a doctor that cuts you with a knife and then sells you the Band-Aid. So well said. Tercia says, I've chatted with Tim, therefore I can say from personal experience he's a nice guy. Thank you. As for Derek, I'll have to be satisfied with believing he's nice. I can vouch for him. Derek is the man, the myth, the legend. He is awesome. And by the way, Tercia is over in South Africa. She and John in the UK interviewed me before, and I'm going to be interviewing both her and John. They're doing great work. So please check out the great work with is it UK Atheists, I believe. And let's see here, Derek is loaded with information. Yeah, Derek is just you're just like a dump truck of mythology information. Sometimes you give us so much we got to go back and process it. Yeah. I literally have to. I've got like some of your videos starred where I'm like I'm going to go back and like read it, listen to them 2 or 3 times.
Sorry, I'm just gathering a bunch of information from various different scholars. You know what I mean? So
yeah, please don't stop. We need it. We need it so bad. Here in South Africa, the vast majority of former believers have to remain in the closet. It makes healing from religious trauma.
Probably saying like it makes it difficult. Probably.
Yeah, it makes it difficult. Yeah, I think we got cut off there, Tracy. But yeah, when we hear you, and I think in many ways our society here in the U.S. is changing.
Sorry about that.
And Derek, if you need to jump in any of these comments, if I'm jumping too fast, feel free.
No, you're good. You're good.
El Caracal, thank you so much for your super chat. Derek, I truly appreciate your work and dedication. I was a Reformed Christian for 10 years and currently going through deconstruction. It's amazing how much I didn't know. Thanks, brother.
Thank you.
Awesome. Praise the Lord.
Yeah. Thanks for the chat.
Thank you, Captive Desk. Appreciate that so much. And let's see here. I'd like to see more folks forgive themselves for believing for so long. Those who want to do the right thing and be good are the most vulnerable to the mental coercion of you better do this or else. Yeah, very good point. Yeah, there's so many of us have to forgive ourselves for being involved in this. I did street preaching in the streets of Philadelphia for many years, did a lot of soup kitchen preaching, street preaching in the Badlands of Philadelphia, Kensington, all that kind of stuff. I was teaching a church all over the place, teaching kids. And yeah, you look back and you think, what the hell did I do? I do like to say, if I put 1,000 people in the kingdom, I'm going to take 100,000 back out, and I mean it. So we're making amends. Do you ever deal with that, by the way, Derek? Just the guilt of people that you might have directed towards the mythology?
I don't know. I mean, maybe a little bit, but like, I also try not. I guess the best way I'd put it is I know I'm being as honest and authentic in what I'm trying to do. Even when I was a believer, I was truly sincere. So I definitely apologize for the personal people I've harmed, like the specific close loved ones, because I would shove Jesus down their throat. Like I was constantly harassing, if you will, with Jesus. I apologize to them, but I haven't like hunted down anyone that maybe I influenced them of a theology or whatever, or helped someone come to Jesus. Yeah, I don't think I've really gone that far. Yeah,
there's times I kind of feel bad, but at the end of the day too, like we were doing the best we could at the time, but still, I'm honestly really glad that I didn't do more damage than I did. I was moving towards several books. I had 2 books. I still got them. They were each like over 1,000 pages long about the Christian worldview and about worship. I wanted to get back into missions and do Bible translation and church planting. So there's a lot of ways in which I was going to be more involved. And I'm so glad I didn't, but I did enough. And I don't feel like my life is about making amends, but I do feel like very compelled, like we started with, to tell people that there's more information that they deserve to have. But Plasma State says, why Harmonic? Are you a music producer too by chance? Plasma, I'm not a music producer, although I do intend to take some music classes over the next couple of years, as well as some classes on animation. I want to make some kids videos regarding just general fun stuff for my kids, as well as for some atheist videos. The harmonic part of it is I love to study Fibonacci harmonic patterns. However, I will say this, when you look at Neoplatonism and Pythagoreanism, there are harmonic concepts in there. And it's very possible that the harmonics literally affected some of the Second Temple Judaism perspectives, in my opinion. And one of my dream goals, this is totally like off the cuff. I have this guess, and it's purely guess. Don't think I'm crazy, but I suspect that there's a possibility that in somewhere in the Gospels there are gematria may be woven in a way that if you could look at it from a harmonic music perspective, that there may actually be songs, like actual notes woven into the text of the Gospels, where you literally could like sing a chapter because it's literally music. But we'll see if I can prove that someday. Anyway, thanks for your question. Let's see here. Jordan Maxwell sums up. Yeah, Jordan Maxwell was instrumental for me as well. I think he's got some weird stuff too, but it's kind of like zeitgeist. It's like there's take some stuff, leave some stuff, but he has a few interesting things to say for sure, and I appreciate his work. Let's see here. Constellation Pegasus, I know. Yes, I am on the Trump hate train, and if anyone does want to hear more from me politically, I have a new channel I'm starting. It's already started, but I'm going to be more active very soon. It's called The First Atheist President. Please do check that out and subscribe. I'm not going to use this channel much for politics. I think there's a good reason to separate them, but I do have a lot to say, and I'm going to be saying it. I'm going to be splitting my activity soon, about 30-70, 30% towards The First Atheist President channel, 70% towards Harmonic Atheist. I do believe that we are in a very dangerous time, and I want to speak up as loudly as I can before we lose the chance to talk about it. So,
just so you know, Constellation's a diehard Trump fan. So,
yeah. And Constellation, I appreciate that you've been supporting us in the past. We're just going to have to agree to disagree on this one. And I'm not speaking for Derek there, but just you and I. I love that you care about our community, but I'm not on the Trump hate train in the sense that I hate Donald Trump. I do certainly hate the things that he's doing, and I do want to be a strong voice on the other side. But again, anyone that's following me, you're not going to hear that much on this channel. It's going to be on the First Atheist President channel, so please subscribe there. See here. Again, for the sake of time, I'm going to go quickly here. Yep, Kip Davis has great stuff to talk about. JoJo Talks. JoJo, I'm going to be interviewing JoJo shortly. She's doing great work. Please go subscribe to her channel. Deception affects millions and billions of people. The controllers of the world know this and work out their plans while you think it's something else. Yeah, there's so much deception going on. And in many ways, I think for me, as I've gone further and further into the deconversion process and past it, you realize this was a psychological issue. The psychology of learning how they indoctrinate children, how they train you to love your abuser, to love Yahweh, to think that he, as an abuser, is actually the most loving character ever. It's all psychological, and so the deception, the propaganda, you have to really understand it to heal, in my opinion. So great point. Susanna from Scotland representing. Great to see you. Thank you so much. So glad you're here. Sending love from Scotland. And let's see here. Just a few more, and then we'll get back to our conversation. Thank you, Robin. Appreciate it. Again, we're talking with Derek, but the overall goal for this chat is to sort of celebrate the 25,000 subscribers I hit. By the way, Derek, like 284,000. So Derek's way past me. I do want to talk about the YouTube journey in just a minute, Derek, but congrats to you, Derek.
Thanks, bro.
You just keep blowing up. That's awesome. You just keep blowing up. Teresia, what you guys do adds value to the lives of millions, actual value without the grifting of prophets and pastors. Thank you so much. Thanks so much. Once you see you've been deceived, you're always on the defense. I'm always looking for the deception first now before I take something for truth. Yeah, absolutely. I feel indoctrinating children is a form of child abuse. Leave the children to be children.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about this, Derek. How has this affected the way you talk to your kids about worldview and morality kind of stuff?
Well, obviously, I still hold to many of the ethics I've already had in terms of being polite, how our mannerisms should be in communicating with people, how you should treat others. I mean, all of that's intact, right? But as far as I don't push skepticism or atheism or anything like that on my kids, but we also don't go to church. So I try to do little things traditionally different. We'll watch movie night or something, go out as a family. We do things together. Unlike when I was a Christian, we went to church. We tried to go to church on Wednesdays. We tried to go to church on Sunday, and it bored the hell out of them. They didn't like it. They didn't like it when I brought them then. So I try not to tell them what to think or how to think, But I always tell them, if you have questions about Bible, I'm more than happy to fill you in. Like, so if you want to know, I'm also not going to be against them. If they decide they want to go down a path of faith, it's something that they want to explore, I'm not against it. I want to give them heads up. I want to help guide them if I can, but I'm not going to stop my children from allowing them to have that option or try to, like, you can't go to, that's not, what I'm about. So.
Well said. Well said. I love that. I've said as much on my channel a few times, so I won't add too much to it, but I'll just say it's an awesome thing, an awesome privilege and responsibility to give children the autonomy and the power to say, you can explore everything and you can take your path, but at any point, you don't have to be like your daddy or your mama or like anybody. This is your journey, and to not threaten them with hell, to say you must believe like me or else. It's such an amazing privilege. And one of the things I do with my kids, I pretend there's like a bubble around their heads, and I'll say, I want you to pretend that bubble is your worldview. And I've explained to them what the word worldview means. But like pretend, and I'll say, I'm going to change your worldview. And I'll tell them, you take my hand and you push away. No, you don't come in my bubble. And we do that quite a bit, and they say, no, I don't have to believe like you. And I like to say too, when we're going out in the car, something like, who has the power over what you believe? And they'll scream out, I do. I'm like, yeah, you have the power. It's not anybody else. Yeah. And I think that's especially true too with sexuality. We grew up where, sexuality was very, very strict. And, I don't predict or guess in any way what my kids' future is going to be like, but I love to give them the sense that, if their future is different in any way from my path, like, I will love you no matter what. And that's so important in this day and age. It really is. And I think they see the healthiness, and the kids see the difference. They really do. They grow up and they see the difference. Like, I can see how Christians live and act, and I can see, how you act as an atheist, and it's very different. They'll know we're Christian. They'll know we're atheists by our love. So, Dr. Aaron Adair in the building. Thank you so much, Dr. Aaron Adair. Thank you so much. You've been just such a great supporter for me and for Derek. I did do a recent interview with Dr. Adair, so I appreciate that. Please do check out his great work. Just nonstop great ideas coming from him. And so, just a few more here, and then we're going to get back to a few questions. I feel the same way with Derek. Looking at these in a secular sense is much more interesting than believing literally. Yeah, and it's just in terms of the word triggering. For a lot of people, I know they need to kind of just get away from all of it. It's just like so much garbage. It's done so much damage. Honestly, I am memorizing scripture again for the first time. I used to memorize thousands of verses. I am literally memorizing scripture again because I feel like my job necessitates it. And it's a valuable thing. But you get to a point where you just like, it's just a book. It's all it is. Like, if I'm going to memorize something from the Book of Mormon or the Bible or whatever, or the Watchtower or anything, or the Quran, like, it's just a book. And you get to a point where you can kind of do that and it doesn't hurt anymore. So It's nice to be at that level.
I agree.
Hannah, thank you so much for the suggestion for animation with Beyond. I'll look at that up and agree. Thank you so much. In terms of going back to just a few final questions.
Yeah.
YouTube is a bit of a beast. And I'm not referring there to Mr. Beast, but YouTube is an interesting animal. And in some ways, especially when you're first going through it, it's a hard journey. I remember when you and I first chatted in that first year when I was doing this, you were like, dude, I love what you're doing. I want to encourage you and I want to support you. What can I do? And in that conversation, we had like a 2-hour phone conversation, I remember. And at some point you said, so how many subscribers are you up to? And I looked it up at the moment. I was like, 63. And you're like, you're at 63 subscribers? That's it? And I was like, well, to me, that's good. Like, I'm getting like two a week or something. And like, we got to get you way past 63. And obviously 25,000 is a lot better than 63. It's a lot less than 284,000. But YouTube is a hard journey. Like, what have been the unique challenges and opportunities? And like, what's the journey been like for you with YouTube, and especially in this niche, content? And just what are some of the highs and low points of the journey being a YouTuber?
Oh, well, I think now that this has been successful enough to be able to provide for my family, and I do it full time, which was back when I was, I think, around 40,000 subs. I had a pretty strong Patreon base, and that you were Patreon for a long time. And, we both went through different things in our lives, which led us to do what we're doing. I think what happened, the way I'm going to answer your question, I guess, is how I'm understanding is like, how did I get where I'm at and what has it been like? Well, in a nutshell, I think I pretty much, not say I capped, but like the growth started slowing down by sticking to the same style of interviews that I was doing, which were in high quality in-person type stuff, got me to probably 80,000 subscribers. And I wanted to do more anyway. And I started to create these documentaries that are like polished videos that people would enjoy more, that, you know, really, I think anyone can tune in and go, wow, there's no face, no talking head. I'm not the one going, oh, ladies and gentlemen, and then explaining it. It's like a movie in a way. And from that, doing those actually changed the growth. So I mixed in both my interviews, my in-person stuff, me just talking, live streams, and added in the documentary stuff. Some of those documentaries, over 1 million views. That really took the growth to a different level. I think the struggle through doing YouTube is two things. I'm overwhelmed with projects, overwhelmed with work, and trying to make sure that I can keep providing for my family, because YouTube has its months where it's low and months where it's high. And it's never consistently necessarily the same. I try to work as hard as I can to make sure that it's the same. And some months are lower and some months are higher, which is why Patreon is so important. But I think the two things, again, is how's YouTube going to pay me this month in terms of, can I get enough views that are going to help my family in terms of providing? And then the other part is the overwhelming amount of work. So we moved down here to Florida to be close to beaches and to be close to fun stuff, but I don't get to do fun stuff often. I'm always working. And so it's a very difficult job, and the stress is pretty up there. You're always doing some project. For example, you want to do a perfect project. You want to do a great project. Well, I'm doing one right now on baptism. I wish it was only a 30-minute documentary, because I could edit a 30-minute documentary within 2, 3, 4 days and it'd be done. Really working hard on it. Well, the script turned into a 2.5, 3 hour documentary because it's so dense and there's so much information. And you go, well, then don't put too much information. Then it isn't going to stand out, because what I'm literally producing is like, I'm collecting the best experts in the world when it comes to baptism, and I'm throwing spaghetti at the wall, and the viewers are going to just be like, I've never heard anyone ever take the scene of Jesus getting baptized in the Jordan River, the heavens open, and the Spirit descend like a dove, and a voice from heaven saying, you are my beloved Son, and you am well pleased. Take just that scene and turn it into a 3-hour absolute roller coaster. And it's going to take me probably a month for me alone to edit that. And I've got 4 other projects right now in the pan. That's just documentaries, not counting the interviews I'm trying to do, not counting the courses we're trying to produce, not counting, like, it's a lot, man. So it's stressful, very difficult work. If you're asking me though, any tips, my tip would be switch it up. Don't just do interviews. Don't just do deconversion stories. Don't just have webcam type things. Put your camera tripod up, put your DSLR, have a high quality one with you just talking into it. Make a quick, short, nice, high quality one. Get a couple that you're adding in graphics in. Like, these are my advices. If you're trying to take it to the next level, the only way to break out of that slow growing rhythm is either to create some noise, controversy, which gets you attention from the rest of YouTube, kind of like what Wes Huff did, or start producing content that reaches a much broader, larger audience.
Yeah, I agree. That's awesome stuff. And I would just ditto that it is hard to be sort of going all the time. And I feel like it's been a crazy journey just trying to find the time. Mm-hmm. And I've struggled. I've said this before, but it's hard to even just keep up with the emails. And I feel so bad because there's people that'll sometimes wait days or even weeks for response, because I'm just like, wow. And I've recently become, like, in the last 6 months, I've become the primary caregiver and custodian for my kids for now. And like, I've got 4 small children, 10 and under, like I'm making all the meals, I'm doing all the laundry, I'm doing everything. It's just, it's single dad life. And when you add all that stuff together, it's an honor and a privilege and a joy, but it's very, very busy. And then, like, so you end up kind of losing the chance for self-care, where you're like, if I've got a few minutes between 8 and 10 o'clock at night, I'm working, and I'm working. And you're just scrambling to answer messages and scrambling to come up with new projects and do this and that. And it is hard. It is hard, but I think it's one of the things where you have to treat it like a business. And I've said that to myself from day one. Like, if you're going to do this full time, treat it like a business. And if you're running a coffee shop, you wouldn't be like, well, I know people want their coffee at 6 a.m., but I'm going to show up at 9 o'clock in the morning instead. Like, no, it's your coffee shop. Show up at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. and get the coffee ready for the people. Work hard, work your tail off, and eventually it'll pay off. But you treat it like a business, and it's hard, you know, when you've got a lot of other obligations. But it's also beautiful because there are so many people that end up saying things like, "Your channel literally changed my life," and I've had at least a handful of people, if not more. Some people, you know, say it a little bit more gently, but some people have said, literally, "You're the reason, Tim. You're the reason I left Christianity," and that just, you know, is such an incredible honor to hear that what I'm doing is making a difference. And when you look at the numbers, and I'm sure your numbers are off the charts compared to mine, but when you look at the numbers of the views and the watch hours, it's like, oh my God, like there's a lot of people watching this channel.
Yeah.
And then you think, I mean, does it ever kind of take your breath away, the responsibility of thinking what you say is literally changing people's lives to the point that it's changing their personal life, it's changing their marriage, whether their marriage even might end up in divorce, it's changing their children and the way they're raising them. It's a lot of responsibility, and it's not like you're inviting people to say, "Hey, listen to me. I want to be the king of your life and stuff." But like, effectively, you are making so many waves that you're affecting, you know, perhaps hundreds of thousands of people or even beyond that. How do you respond to that responsibility factor?
Again, like when I was Christian trying to convert people, I didn't think, okay, this converting people is going to make him divorce his heathen wife, or this is going to make him change everything to the point where it's going to destroy other things in his life or something. That was never my intention. So that's why I don't carry any guilt or shame for how people might take this information and go with it. I tried also put a caveat on there and say, hey, try to reconcile. You don't need to divorce someone just because they don't believe like you. Like clearly that don't become a reverse fundamentalist either. Like try to be patient and work things out. Like, but I also don't try to get into their personal like marriage, go to marriage counseling, talk to someone professional about this. I'm not a professional as far as any of that is concerned. So I think the responsibility of trying to just educate people and give them what I was never given when I was a Christian, that is an honor to hear people go, I found freedom. I've never had anyone email me. Let me put it another way. And I've had a ton of email messages through Facebook, like on my Myth Vision page, on my personal page, emails, like endlessly, comments all the time, like about how my channel helped them deconvert, help them find freedom, help them leave this particular toxic religion that they had. But I've never had anyone email me and go, thanks, asshole. Because now that you made me find freedom and joy and happiness, well, it wasn't really freedom and joy. You made me miserable. You made my life ruined. You know what I'm saying? Like I've never had anyone comment and go like, your information you've given me has destroyed my life or caused me any personal damage. No. And I try to encourage people as much as I can, while I don't know what they do in their private bedrooms or what they do in their private homes or what they do in public life, like to be a better person and to try and be patient with the believer, because I think they're also struggling like an addict. They're stuck. They're trapped in a bubble, and we need to be empathizing and don't be so judgmental like we were when we were believers, and don't be so toxic. Try not to be that person. Try to be patient. Try to understand you were once like them, right? So you know what it was like. Why would you then be so judgmental and overly, you know what I'm saying, on the average person? I get it with some assholes like apologists that are just rude and abusive in their ways of like trying to attack and argue these ideas, but not normal people, you know, just on our everyday, just trying to live their lives and enjoy their families. And you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think too, a related point is you've mentioned before the idea of the people on our side who are more aggressive and maybe even rude to people who call in. It's been interesting seeing how I think taking a more gentle tone, which I would say you definitely fall in that category as well. I've had a lot of people comment like, Tim, you're very gentle in the way you approach things. And I think it's part of it's just the way I come across. In my mind, I'm much more of a hardcore atheist. I'm a materialist. I'm a nihilist. I don't think any of this matters, and I don't think there's a God and all that. But, you know, I think there's a point of saying we can tread in a way that gives people the sense that we care about them, that there's a gentleness. And it's an interesting thing because I think you're kind of used to that a little bit in church. Like,
Mhm.
you're used to the guy that's going to come up to you. Let's just pray about it. Let's pray about it. And I care about you. And we're kind of, with the worship music, we're going to kind of schmooze you into this atmosphere. Don't you just feel the Spirit of God? And I'm not trying to create an atmosphere, of course, but I do think that sense of like, I'm not here to scream. If people disagree with me, that's okay. Like, we can completely disagree. And when I'm in a conversation with somebody and I completely disagree with them, instead of saying something like, I think you're wrong, you're dead wrong, I'll literally just ask permission, like, hey, do you mind if I play devil's advocate for a second? And then be like, just curious of your thoughts on this. And it's an antagonism of sorts, but it's very gentle, and it gives them the freedom to save face and be like, you know what, we do disagree, and that's okay. And I think it's so critical to have a gentleness, because a lot of us are thinking to ourselves, we're going to win the day, we're going to win the argument because we're aggressive and we're rude. We're not. People don't want that. Some people probably do, but most of people want to say, you're civil, you're rational, and you care, and you're willing to agree to disagree. And when we're done, let's go have a pizza and a beer together. Like, we can still be friends even though we disagree. I think that's going to go so much further, not just in our circles of, the different questions we ask, but between us and Christians, to say, Christians, we think their worldview is idiocy and it's toxic, but we care about them and we love them, and we're not here to berate them. But for the sake of time, I'm going to just read a few more quick comments and then we'll wrap up. Okay. And if you could be thinking about, my final question for you is going to be, and I'll give you a minute to think about this. I ask a lot of people that I interview, if you were talking to someone who was going through the hardest part of deconversion, where they're like, I still believe in Jesus and I still believe in the Bible, but I'm seeing too much to unsee it, and I don't know how to put it all. Maybe they've been on your channel, maybe they've been on channels like mine or others, and they're like, you know what, I can't go back, but I don't know how to go forward. And I know if I do go forward, I'm going to lose stuff. What would you say to the people going through the hardest parts of this, where it just feels like they're at the end of the tunnel, there's no light at the end of the tunnel, and wow, this is really hurting. So keep that in mind for a second, and we'll come right back to you for the wrap up. Christine says, love the work both of you guys do on your channels. It helps me feel sane here in the Deep South. I as well here in Atlanta, Georgia. Huge thank you and congrats on the subs. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And again, for anyone that's joining us late, if you haven't subscribed to Derek's channel, Myth Vision, please do. And also, if you're interested in the political stuff I'm going to be getting into soon, the first atheist president, which I do hope to be someday. And Derek, if I get to be the first atheist president, by the way, you'll be my attorney general or my vice president or something. Yeah, I hear you, AF Walker. I'm sure that being a filmmaker has got to be an amazingly hard job. I can't imagine. Thank you so much, Derek, for that advice. And let's see here. Shannon, you give us powerful, important content. Thank you, Shannon. I'm assuming you're talking both of us there. Hello, congrats, Tim. Thank you, David. And yep, it's about freedom and humility. My mother raised my sister and I as super Christian girls with the consent of my father, super atheist. They were married over 50 years and find the direct opposites as my greatest gift in life. That's awesome. What a great story to be able to respect each other for 50 years and still have different worldviews. It's hard, though, especially if one of you says, I love you and I respect you, but by the way, you're going to burn in hell, and I will praise God for it. Like, that's hard. It's very hard stuff, depending on where their theology lands. Enjoy the show. Says, it's too bad that some people deconstruct and then take a nihilistic, materialistic approach. Well, I'm trying to keep an open mind to anything. So hopefully, if there's something else out there that I need to be exposed to, whether it's divine or otherwise, I'll hopefully be able to receive it when I see the evidence. Stephen says, be calm yet accepting, getting over a lifetime of believing. One is definitely confused, mature, kind of thoughtful of each other. Yeah. It's not about winning anymore. Deborah says, thank you, Tim, for keeping your political views separate from this channel. We have politics in our face all the time. I come to your channel for community. I go to Derek's channel for knowledge. That's awesome. Very cool. Derek recently directed his content towards personal takedowns of other independent content creators. He disqualified.
Say anything about community or unity? Weak, lame, and embarrassing for him. Who? I'm curious, Matthew. Who?
Yeah, Derek is not disqualified in any way, shape, or form. That's
but I am curious to know when he says personal takedowns of other independent, is he talking about inspiring philosophy, apologetics? Because if he's talking about apologetics, then totally. Yeah, I have no interest in catering to apologists, but that's just because I was one and I understand what kind of agenda they're on, what kind of dishonest. I start with my conclusion and then they go out of their way to do that. But I'm curious to know. Yeah.
And just to piggyback on that, if you were in a prison and you had the key to get out your whole life, and the other prisoners around you did as well, and none of you knew it, and you finally realized you had the key and you finally got out, and as you go to tell the other people that, hey, you all have the keys, you can get out, there is like a prison guard saying, no, don't let them know, don't let them know. I'm sorry, but we're gonna fight. We're not here to ruin anybody's channel. We're certainly not here to tell anybody that we don't care about them. We love apologists personally. We love them. We love their families. We care about them. We wish them well in their lives. But if they're going to try to shackle people's minds, we're going to fight philosophically against what they're doing. This is a journey of getting out of prison.
Someone said he's talking about Amon Hillman. So you have this guy who is a classicist, specifically specialized in Roman medical stuff. So Latin was his main language, not Greek, who now claims to be a Greek philologist, which is not what he went to school for, who claims that the wildest, most wonky interpretation of Mark 14 with Jesus in a garden with a little kid being a leistes. He's sexually doing things. The text, he claims the Greek, it says in the Greek and stuff. Sorry. Not only that, there's so much other stuff. I'm just not trying to add more mud. And I'm telling you, this guy's just not like, he's an apologist to me. That's how
I have actually interviewed him. It's one of my well viewed videos. I don't know what I think yet. I don't feel like my pay grade is enough to understand all the arguments on both sides, but I hear you. But yeah,
that's why I went to scholars who know Greek and actually ask 10 other Greek experts. And of course, what any cult leader does is acts like they don't know Greek. I do. It's like any church you go to. My doctrine's the correct doctrine. You go, but what about this one? They sound great. They learned a lot. No. That's a false church. That's a false doctrine. They don't know. I know. He's running a cult, bro. I'm telling you right now. And I've got way more I could say about this guy. It's only going to trigger the Ammonites. I call them Ammonites because they are diehard followers of this dude, and he's making up stuff. He's literally making stuff. That's why he won't debate Stephen. My buddy Stephen, who does know the Greek and has already dissected his claims and shown you that even the LSJ doesn't agree with him. He's conflating sources that aren't actually the source that he's supposed to go to. So like, sorry, when you're out here talking about pedophilia over and over and over and over, and you're obsessed with little boy in the garden, and you have this like endless going back to, well, Abraham was also a trafficker and this person was a trafficker. And it's odd to me, bro. Like, you kind of want to know what his search engine history looks like. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, that's my personal take. And there's so much more, but.
Well, I think as well, it's a great point to say as a side note that no matter who you're listening to, listen to others besides them. If the only person you're listening to is the amazing Bart Ehrman, he's amazing beyond words. But if he's the only person you're listening to, if the only person listened to is Derek or me, like, do not put your chips, like, just like you would say, don't put your chips on the Bible alone anymore. Don't put your chips on anybody. Like, get a multitude of people, and then keep an open mind even from then. And always say, there's always more to be said. There's always more to learn. Yeah. So, but yeah, I'm moving on from that. I think we're going to probably have to wrap up in a second, but love you both. YouTube is awesome. Yeah. Again, Derek's doing great work. Yeah, we're talking about the Babylon guy.
Yep.
Let's see here. Derek, I'm going to let you have the last word here. Again, the question is to someone going through the hardest part of the deconversion process. Life's dark, and they think they might lose relationships. They certainly don't know. They're afraid of maybe the devil's got them. They're afraid they might go to hell for their doubts. What would you say to somebody who's really struggling? This isn't academic. This is very emotional and psychological.
Yeah. Take your time. I would say take your time and get around people who aren't telling you what you must believe, but that love and care about you and want what's best for you. If you're also psychologically indoctrinated with the fear, I would go talk to a professional. That would be my advice, because they can help you. They know psychotherapy. They know all sorts of interesting things that can help you not be so terrified. It was gradual for me. It was slow. And don't, follow your own experience and your own, whatever guides you and helps you get there, of course. But I would just say, don't revert back in just because you're afraid either. So like my advice, right? I'm just saying I'd talk to a professional. That would be my thing, because you can't go wrong if you at least tell them to go medically look to an actual professional, because each person might be in a different place at a different level in their journey. Some might be far more indoctrinated than others. And I don't want to give advice as if I'm some professional. I'm not. But I would say if you're interested in thinking maybe this isn't the case, get community that also is thinking like that as well. Because the church is going to tell you, no, come talk to the authorities, come talk to our pastor, come talk to our minister, and we'll keep you. You can have your doubts, but we're going to keep you in our bubble. We need to keep you here. Well, I don't want anyone telling you what you must believe. That's why I say just go talk to someone who's a professional, preferably a non-faith-based one that can actually come with modern science and help you. That would be my personal advice.
Good stuff. And I'll just say too, just for anyone, if you really think that God might still be out there and you're just like, I think I'm just maybe self-deceiving, maybe the devil's got me, if you're really honestly searching, I would just, at that point, if I were you, I would bank on the idea that God will see your heart and know that you're truly asking real questions. You're not trying to sin. You're not trying to screw God over. You're truly trying to find the truth. I can't imagine that God wouldn't be very, very happy to know that you're truly trying to figure life out, as we all are, and respect that. And to give you, if you're trying to search for the light, that he would want to give you more light. I don't think he's out there to give you more light myself, but I don't think you should be ashamed of asking those hard questions. And like you said, the community's here. For those of you that are a little further in that journey, like we are here, we care about you and we love you. And I think for most people, they would say it does eventually get better. It's not going to be easy, but it does eventually get better. And the journey gets to a point where you kind of eventually move on from it. And I think for a lot of us, we'd say, I couldn't go back if I tried. If I tried to go back to Christianity, I couldn't. It just looks eventually so ridiculous, and I'm done with it. The big question at that point is much more about how do I use my short time on this world to love one other people, to just encourage them, to help those in need, and to make the most of my time, especially for my loved ones and my family and my friends. And at that point, you create kind of a whole new life, a whole new worldview, a whole new heritage, a legacy that's beautiful. And I just encourage you too, that for those of you that are a little further past that point, let yourself really feel this. I found that for me, one of the biggest things that has come of this is poetry. Like I write poetry and songs now every day. I'm writing deconversion, and just not even deconversion stuff, just like how to love it better and live life and enjoy the beauty. I'm working on one right now. I'm going to share shortly called "This Is Why We Dance," and just like learning to dance again and learning to love yourself. Like you said, Derek, love yourself again, enjoy yourself. And just to realize you've been in a very long war against yourself because of what Christianity did with you, with original sin. And you're the son of Adam and Eve. Your inherited sin nature. You have been at war with yourself. And to say, I'm going to love my body, my mind, my thoughts, my doubts, my sexuality, everything about me is amazing. And just when you get to that point, it's really hard to go back to somebody that says, I think you're horrible through and through, and apart from me, you're worthless. Eventually it gets sickening and you just can't do it. So that's my 2 cents. But any other final words for us today, Derek?
I got words for Constellation. Hey man, look, if you let it go, if you honestly let it go, I honestly believe not only you will be a healthier person mentally, but also you can allow the natural process of things to happen that doesn't harm or even prevent things like Bob coming back to the YouTube world. So these kinds of comments don't help Bob. They don't help me. They don't help, I think, anyone in the community that's actually trying to restore these kinds of things. At the end of the day, it just creates more dogmatism and more, hey, I've got my position and clearly you're like antagonistic with me. So I'm going to stay here where I'm at doing what I'm doing. And I would recommend anyone, again, to take the advice that you just said, take it slow, deconvert at your own pace, go seek medical professional help. That will help. I promise that's the best way to probably go. And seek a community that's like-minded, that you're interested in actually connecting with, that, shares the same vision or ideas that you might have. That's my advice. So
Well
Thank
said. And if I can just wrap up with a few thank yous, I want to say first thank you to my supporters, both people that just support me in general, and as many of you have been with me for years now at this point, and those of you that have been able to support me financially. If you do want to support me, all the ways to do so are beneath this video. Thank you as well to Derek. I mean, honestly, I think I'm speaking for hundreds of thousands of people at this point in saying you are a linchpin and a hub for so many of us. You know, we kind of go to different channels and this and that, and then we come back to Myth Vision, and we kind of go and check this, that out, and we come back to Myth Vision. It's like you're bringing so many people together on so many levels. I'm sure you've helped many of us just find each other and become friends in the online world and in real life. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Please keep it up. We need you more than I can possibly say. And I hope your channel hits 1 million subscribers in the next few years and beyond. And it just hopefully it goes beyond our little like bubbles of conversation, but more and more people are, especially I think in this day and age, pardon me, Constellation Pegasus for saying this, but I think in this day and age with the political and cultural climate, more and more people are going to look at Christianity and say, something's wrong here. And they're going to go to channels like yours and say, that's why I felt like this. That's why something was wrong here, because something is wrong. And channels like Myth Vision are big enough. I'm still a small fish in the pond, but channels like Myth Vision are big enough to get the attention of a lot of people quickly. And man, just thank you so much. You're the man, the myth, the legend. And let's do it again before 4 years pass. Okay.
Absolutely. Look, within the year, let's do it again. We'll have a topic, of course.
Yeah, that sounds great. Absolutely. Well, thanks again, Derek. Great to see you. Thanks everybody in the comments. I appreciate it. If I didn't get to anybody, I apologize. I will read through them after we're done. But thank you again. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Have a great weekend. Thank you.